Hey guys, welcome back to Dirt Gear TV. Today I'm going to be showing you how you can bleed a brake master cylinder if you just replaced a master cylinder on your project, whether it's a go-kart, whether it's a car, whether it's a motorcycle, whatever it is. I'm going to show you how you can bleed a brake master cylinder without any special parts or any special tools, so stick around. So I just replaced the brake master cylinder here on my 400 horsepower turbo dune buggy. And what I need to do is I need to bleed the brake master cylinder. And this is not to be mistaken with bleeding the brakes themselves and bleeding the calipers. That's something a little bit different. Now you can see I've already got a vacuum pump here for bleeding the rest of the system, okay? But the problem is when you replace a brake master cylinder, the air that's trapped inside the actual cylinders and the pistons themselves is not going to be bled by using a caliper bleed system, even this vacuum pump here. Now, you guys know I'm a big fan of using these vacuum pumps to bleed brake cylinders. However, this will not bleed a brake master cylinder when you've had to replace a master cylinder. Now, in most cases, when you look up videos on how to bleed a brake master cylinder, they have special kits that you can buy. Of course, that takes time and money to do that. So I'm going to show you guys how you can do that for free, DIY yourself with just a couple of simple parts. Now, the only thing that you're going to need is a little piece of hose like this. Okay, so this is a 1/4-inch hose inside diameter, and it measures about 11/32 on the outside. For you metric guys, we're shooting for about a 9mm hose. Okay, so you're going to want two different lengths of hose, and all I've done here is I've removed the banjo bolt and I've forced the hose into the opening. I've given a few twists so that thread will kind of lock on to the hose. And basically we're going to run this hose up into the fluid in the reservoir. Now, of course, you're going to fill up your reservoir, and then what we're going to be doing is we're going to just do a series of pumps to bleed the air out of the system. Now you can see when I release the brake pedal, these air bubbles go back and forth inside this. So I've already successfully bled this one pretty well. And so you can see as I depress the pedal, there's no more air coming out of this side here. If there were still air trapped in this line, we'd be seeing a few air pockets come out here. Oh, there's one. Okay, so I just had to pump a little bit harder, and you can see the air is naturally going to find the higher part of this tube. So like here, I'm going to kind of move the tube around to help those air pockets collect at the high point, right up here at the middle. And we'll give that one more pump, and we'll get that air pocket out of there. Oops. See, I came out of the fluid, so the best way to do this is to prop this up so it's submerged in the fluid. But now I've just forced the air out, and then we'll draw up some fluid again. The end of the hose is buried inside the fluid. Anytime I get a small air pocket, what I'm doing is I'm moving the hose so that air pocket naturally flows to the top of this hose. And then I've got a tight bend at the top, so that way I can force that air pocket out at the very end with a few pumps. Just going to continue to pump the cylinder until I'm got a little tiny air bubble here. We're going to let that flow up to the very top. I'm going to force those bubbles out of the system by pumping. Then we're going to draw fluid back in. We're just going to repeat this until I'm convinced there's no more air pockets left in here. Okay, so now once you feel like you've gotten all the air pockets out of the cylinder inside the pump, we'll go ahead and we'll thread the banjo bolt back in. Now there is going to be air that's inside this banjo bolt and inside this line, but again, that'll be bled differently than the cylinder. Remove that guy. Try not to get brake fluid everywhere. I suggest using a rag because you will get brake fluid everywhere. Okay. So now that this one has been bled, we can now use our vacuum pump to bleed the rest of the air out of the lines and the caliper. But you'll always want to do this first. Now the other thing I would suggest is try to use the high point. So obviously the air bubbles are going to rise to the top whenever possible. So that means that most of the air is going to be trapped. This thing has a slight back angle to it, so most of the air pockets are going to be trapped inside either the banjo bolt here or towards this end. So in the case of this one, I'm going to use this port here. Even though this is for a brake switch, I'm going to use this port. First thing I'm going to do is top up the fluid. Get our hose put together. You can use clips, or there's different things that you can use that will help position this, but in the case of mine, I'm just gonna position it so it doesn't come apart. Now when I start off, I'm pumping very slow because I want to draw in fluid and not air. As we start to fill with fluid, I'm going to use a little bit quicker pumps to get some of the air to travel through. Now you can see the air pockets are trying to come through, but they can't. They're going down before they're having to go up. So I'm going to position this on a steeper angle. Now when I pump, that air pocket should travel right to the top. Now that the air pocket is at the top, I don't have enough fluid movement to be able to push this air pocket through. So again, I'm going to reposition this slightly. So there's less travel for that air pocket. There we go. And that's it, guys. So now we've bled the master cylinder, and now I can go through and use our vacuum pump to bleed the rest of the system. But that's how you can bleed a master cylinder yourself without any special equipment. Now you can buy kits, okay? There's kits that have ports that thread into these, and then you just attach the hoses, and they give you clips for the top of the reservoir where you can run your lines in. But this is a way that you can do it without any special kit, as long as you have some 1/4" tubing. All right, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one. Quick update here, guys. You can see that this is not the same master cylinder as I was using before. So I was under the impression that I wasn't building enough fluid pressure. So I actually went down in size from a 3/4" piston, and I believe the one that you see in the video is a 1/2" piston per side. So that's just not moving enough fluid. So this is a completely different unit. This is now a 7/8 piston master cylinder, and this one is the first one I've used on this machine that's actually moving enough fluid to get the brakes to actually work pretty good. So if bleeding the air does not solve the problem, you may have to go to a larger bore piston on your brakes, just depending on the application. But this one's now working great. You can see I've got a pretty extreme ratio here. Basically, the way that your pedal ratio works is you take the distance from the pivot here to where your pivot point is here, and then you measure that based off of the total length from here to the pivot point. Then you do some math. So this one's probably like a 6:1 pedal ratio, which is pretty good. It's not, the brakes are not sharp by any means. You do kind of have to stand on them, but I'll take standing on the brakes all day long over having no brakes at all. So for you dune buggy guys and small project guys, I will link this particular brake master cylinder down below. And this one solved most of my braking issues. I still do have fairly weak brakes on this machine, but that's not going to be resolved unless I'm prepared to put on new calipers and new rotors. So anyway, that's the video. The brakes have been thus resolved up until this point. It does brake, it just doesn't brake super strong. So we'll go with it as it is. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.